started back in 1928 with Harry Williamson buying the Kingsacre nursery site and started growing roses and trees. And the business grew very rapidly as he was very entrepreneurial and very passionate about plants. The business grew and developed, and then under the leadership of his son, Peter Williamson, it expanded very rapidly as the business got involved in retail, setting up some of the first garden centres in the country. There was a landscape business and the nurseries grew as well. We're now in the third generation of the Williamson family and going from strength to strength with the same passion for plants. And we're very excited about the latest chapter, which is the trend we see developing for Do It For Me. And we're delighted to be working with Caroline and Kate to develop this idea. And the displays you can see today talk about that journey that we want to make with you as people move to having their gardens designed and enjoying their plants more. I'll keep the introductions quite short and hand over to Adam, and he'll explain about the proceedings for today.
What's going on today? I mean, we're really sort of flexible. We want to make the day work for you guys first and foremost. The plan is we have a wonderful tractor and trailer just sort of sat outside the front here. And we would encourage you to jump aboard that very shortly to have a sort of a tour around the 70 acres that is Wybell Nursery's sort of container unit, and a sort of a guided tour. And I really would recommend you do that and give you a real good flavour of what we're all about. So we'll be asking you to jump aboard there shortly. We've also got sort of teas and coffees on all day. Lunch is going to be sort of provided from sort of midday as well, so tuck into that when that arrives, please. And we're also, luckily enough, we've got two of the sort of leading garden designers that have agreed to give us some presentations later in the day. So we've got Caroline and Kate that will be giving a couple of talks at 11:30 and 2 o'clock. But before that, we thought it would be good for you to get an idea of how we sort of created, say we, that's nothing to do with it whatsoever, how we, Roy, have created these wonderful displays, because these have been created by Kate and Caroline. And by using all the plants that were around the nursery in the last sort of few days, and they look absolutely stunning. So thank you very much, ladies, for putting this together. But it's very much about sort of what's on trend, and Caroline and Kate are going to give us a bit more detail behind this before you jump on the sort of tractor and trailer and then see these plants in situ. So if I could hand over to Caroline and Kate just to give us a little bit.
To be here at Wybell, it's a real honour to be working with them, and very exciting to be playing with plants. What we wanted to do was illustrate to you, and this is very important as designers and landscape designers, how you can use existing stock. Everything you see here was just on the gardens, on the garden nursery out here, nothing brought in, and use it to replicate Chelsea trends. We both went to Chelsea earlier this year, and if you retrieve the handout that's in your pack, there's a very whistle-stop tour of Chelsea trends there. I'm just going to talk you through those and explain to you how we created these based on those Chelsea trends, but using Wybell stock.
Just to pick up on that, we went round and looked at all of the gardens and photographed them and distilled the 6 most important ideas for planting. Often it's colour, isn't it? But also, of course, texture and form for being arty, shape really, also very important. The trends are on boards here as well, and as Kate says, we've actually pulled together the trends and planted them up. And we had about as much fun as 2 women did have their clothes on 2 days ago, going around the nursery, gathering those plants up and creating this. And we'll go through this in more detail. One more thing I'd just like to say, and Kate's already mentioned it, but I want to reiterate it. It's something I teach at the school. Some of my students are sitting out there, thank you for coming. Good planting is not about trying to find rare, exotic, specific cultivars. Because I bet you to replace them for your clients. Good planting is about using good doers, kind of plants that are sold in garden centres. The magic happens in how you put them together. And we're delighted to see the same plants shown in a sort of garden centre display, and then we tried to work on magic with the Chelsea trends here. So hopefully that clearly illustrates the difference.
It does, and what it illustrates is why they are back on trend. It was so easy to put together because the raw material is such good quality, and it really is bang on trend. Up there with the fashions. Right.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you just over the next half an hour about 3 different projects that I've been involved in, which I've used almost exclusively plants from Wyvale. And some of you might have been at the little talk that Kate and I gave right at the start of today, talking about the Chelsea trends. But I really am passionate about the quality of Wyvale plants. I was blown away the first time I came here. I'm sure you've enjoyed your tour as well. But the quality of the plants are phenomenal. And when you're working with clients, I'm sure a lot of you know, they don't really understand if the plant looks a bit scruffy, it doesn't really matter. They want them looking great and pristine. And I can always rely on Wyvale for that. 2 of the projects that I'm going to show you really were show gardens, or to be technically accurate, feature gardens, because they weren't judged. But the first one was for the RHS at Malvern. I'm going to take you through some of the design ideas behind that garden. So this was the celebrity feature stage for 2014. And my big idea, and anyone who's trained with me, and there's poor people sitting in the audience who are still being trained by me, know that I talk a lot about having a big idea as a garden designer. That's very important to a planting designer. What is the core principle that hangs all of your design choices together? In this case, it was trying to create a stage for the autumn show at Malvern, which celebrated the fact that autumn is the right time to plant, because we've forgotten that. Lots of our customers have forgotten that, and I'm on a mission to try and remind people of that. It was also about celebrating that a garden can look great in the autumn and winter, and as designers we all know that more and more we're designing planting to leave things standing through the winter, to enjoy the seed heads. We don't have to cut everything back in the autumn and stick it in the compost bin. We can enjoy the garden for summer and for winter. So that's my big idea that I'm working to. And what I do a lot with my students and for myself is design using mood boards. So I'm creating a mood board for autumn, one for winter and one for spring, that helps me identify what the colours, shapes and textures are for each of those 3 ideas. So sure enough, some of these images are truly wintry and frosty, but some of them, are plants which just have the colours, shapes and textures of winter. And I'm using the mood boards to help me identify those. And that's what I'm hoping this stage is going to look like. Autumn at the back, winter at the sides, spring at the front, and Monty Don looking like he's walking on water, which for me, he kind of does. So things have changed a lot through the development process. Pardon?
That wasn't Monty Don, that was...
No, it wasn't Monty Don. You were meant to use some imagination there. That was Monty Don reincarnated as his female alter ego.
Oh, right.
It was actually Anne-Marie Powell, I think. Okay, so this is kind of my master layout plan. This is, the garden's only 9 metres by 5 metres. And here it is a SketchUp. We use SketchUp a lot. I'm sure you do too. The big idea being we've got spring planting at the front. By now we've got the winter planting more as we're in the middle section. Autumn at the back. And I was going to use glass panels covered in sticky designs. I've forgotten the name of it. It's like a plastic laminate that you can design and you peel it off, stick it on the glass. It's got very dark grey at the front and a sort of frosted effect at the back. Really I wanted to use Angie Lewin artwork, but couldn't afford her. So I knocked something together myself, which was sort of celebrating that frosty seed head idea. That's Angie Lewin, very on trend, celebrating winter seed heads. That's Caroline Tatum, not quite as beautiful, but kind of gets the idea. So one sticker was this dark grey, another set of stickers with these frosted, really evoking that frosty feel. Oh, now where am I? Here I am at Wyvale. And that's Colin, I think, isn't it? Chris! Oh, apologies to Chris. I'm dyslexic, so names and me sort of don't get on. And I was really excited when I came to look around and found that tree for my feature garden. And I couldn't believe the price. It was amazing value compared to what I paid for the previous year. This is one of my nifty 50, Paris Chanticleer. It's a fantastic tree, all wrapped up there, ready for transit. And here are some of my long-suffering students over at Malvern now. We're getting the plants delivered. We're starting to build the stage. Everyone's very excited. Lots of watering going on. It's very windy at Malvern. Anyone who's built a garden at Malvern, you know, lots of irrigating because it's always so windy. The stage was built in modules, in sections, because after the show, it's going to go over to the Cheltenham Literature Festival. And we called the garden A Brave New World of Beauty, partly because we're celebrating the seed heads, but also because in 2014, the Cheltenham Literature Festival theme was Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World. So all of this had to get broken down and go in a van and get transported over to Cheltenham. We had 3 days to rebuild it. So it was a bit of a challenge. To be honest, the autumn is a stupid time to build a show garden anyway, but then to have to break it down and build it back up again was even more stupid. But there you go, I like a challenge. So the structure's starting to come together. Here we are at Malvern in the main speaker's marquee, and all my lovely plants are being lined up here, like an artist puts their palette together. I've got no planting plans, but I very much have got those mood boards in my head as I'm then starting to put the plants together, just like we did really over at Wyvale to do the trends. So plants are coming in. I'm all the time thinking about my colours, shapes and textures. Here my glass panels have gone in with decal stickers, that's what they're called, decal stickers on. And there you get a nice look at those. They created quite a nice visual effect. One of my ideas with the design of the stage was that I wanted to frame the celebrities, literally actually frame them, and that worked really well on some of the photography. Here my lovely cedar deck is all covered up because of my muddy booted builders, but you can see I've got my spring at the front, winter in the middle and autumn at the back. And I hope you agree that with that planting it really feels wintry. It's got a frosty colour, shape and texture vibe going on, even though it's obviously not actually frosty. This is the back of the stage, and back here's the green room. Monty Don's in there, and no one else is going to see that, but I couldn't have Monty looking at ugliness, so I made that look as beautiful as the front, even though it was just for me and him. It was our private little moment that we shared together. Very important. On any stage, getting the lighting right, obviously absolutely critical, so we spent a lot of time doing that. And rather pretentiously, I don't mind admitting, I put these metal fish to signify the transition of time through the seasons, as a bit like a fish swimming through the water. The deck is revealed, makes a big difference. And I'm sure you know already, wherever you've got water in a garden, you've got reflections. And that's very much what using water is about, isn't it? Also very important, it includes some of your celebrities to sit so they can have their photos taken. Very important too. And I had I was one of the speakers at this event, and I was sitting in the green room, sharing a slightly awkward, if I'm honest, conversation with Guess Who Monty Don, who was probably thinking, oh my God, I need a restraining order at this point. There was a lovely lady talking about foraging on stage. I've forgotten the name, Liz, I think she's called Liz. And all of a sudden, the entire audience erupted into hordes of laughter, and I thought, I just had a sixth sense as to what had happened. She came backstage with one very wet foot. She said, I thought that was granite. No, luckily it was only 20 centimetres deep, so no harm was done. Oh dear, looks like Joe's making me nod off there a bit. So we had a lot of fun on the stage as well. We won Best Feature Garden for it too, from OHS, which was very nice. But 3 days later, it looked like that. And I'm sure you've all been through this as well. We had 3 days again to put it all back together, which it did very well. I love using this as an example for my students of how things shrink when they're outdoors, because we're used to always seeing things in rooms at a sort of human scale, but the minute you take something and put it outside, the scale of it seems to shrink down enormously. So that was a lovely thing then to follow through a bit. Notice how much smaller it looks outside than it looks inside the marquee, which is interesting. Interesting to me anyway. Okay, so I then had another challenge. That wasn't challenge enough. Malvern said, right, we want you to do the stage. Big success, loved your stage. Can you do another one? But here's the problem. We've only got £5,000. Ouch. Could you just break up the stage, reinvent it and do it, chop it up and make it into something else? And I sat there for a couple of days designing on SketchUp, but everything I came up with looked like I'd chopped it up and reinvented it, and it just all looked a bit second-hand. So then I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is unashamedly use the same stage, because I've done spring and autumn and winter, now I'm going to do summer. And what's summer about? Summer's about light. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing in mirrors. So we didn't use glass, A, because I couldn't afford it, but B, I couldn't afford the insurance in case it garrotted Carol Klein. So we actually used Perspex with an aluminium backing, which worked very well. So the SketchUp model here, the same stage, but I'm using my mirror to create an almost hall of mirrors effect. So the reflections are reflecting off each other. And also I was hoping I wouldn't need quite so many plants, sorry Wyvale, just because I didn't have much money. And also Wyvale told me, Malvern told me at the last minute, your stage is going to be in the middle of nowhere, and it's on a big slope. So the whole garden had to sort of be lifted on a wedge of cheese, effectively, to lift it up. So technically challenging. Every single one of these plants came from Wyvale. And one of my trends that I talk about as well is the return of the shrub. Shrubs are coming back because we've been beguiled by perennials and grasses for a long time, quite rightly so. But shrubs, if you're saying, which I do ad nauseum, that good planting is about colour, shape and texture and contrast and harmony of those three things, you can get that just as effectively from a shrub as you can from those other plants. Don't get me wrong, grasses and perennials, I love them and they've very much got a place. But we've rather forgotten how wonderful shrubs are, what good doers they are. So I wanted to use a lot of them in this garden. So all of these plants supplied by Wyvale. And here's my stage. I've re-sanded it off and covered it in mirrors. And just that different texture has completely reinvented the space. It's now filled with light. Oh, nearly all the plants have gone in. It's always amazing how many plants it takes to create a show garden or a feature garden. Again, getting the lighting right. Quite a lot of yellow in there. This is sort of just as yellow is starting to come back in as a trend from Chelsea. Still there, as we were saying earlier today. But it's all about those colours, shapes and textures. We were mentoring the show gardens last year, so that's some of the students who were there building the gardens. James Alexander Sinclair, what a show-off! Can't help it, can he? But no, we had a lovely time at Malvern, and thanks to our lovely plants from Wyvale, it was a great big success. Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about was a really exciting project I was very lucky to be involved in this year, which was Highgrove. And there was a festival in April. Kate Doe is going to be speaking at 2 o'clock this afternoon. She was the creative director of the festival. She graduated from our one-year garden design course last year and has gone on to do many great things. That's just one of them. And she kindly invited me to design the speaker's stage because she'd seen that I'd done it at Malvern. And many of the students very kindly came to help build it. So I'm looking at one lovely person there, and Lynn's around. There's another one standing up. Lynn did a lot of the building, which was very much appreciated. So one of the challenges about this stage was that I was asked to sort of evoke the spirit of Highgrove, but I'm in Highgrove. That's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Because whatever I do, it's in danger of looking like a second-rate version of the real thing. Okay, so I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? And right at the beginning, it was all pulled together rather quickly, Kate might be mentioning, but right at the beginning, that's all I knew, was that that was the colour palette. That's all I had to go on, that was it. At the time of year, we didn't even have that right at the beginning, and it was going to be sort of a lovely burgundy colour, which did slightly change, but not completely, and a lovely fresh yellow. So based on that, and thinking about some of the work I've done at Malvern, of course I've got my mood boards, because it always starts with mood boards for me. And one of the challenges is finding plants that are going to be in flower that early in the year. I don't know if anyone's done any kind of show or feature garden at that time of the year. It's getting colour and it's getting height. So Kate and I were regularly coming along here, hounding them, being locked in to sort of make people missing their trips home in the evening. We were literally locked in, just scouring the nursery, trying to find what was going to give us height and colour, and they were fantastic. They put things specially into polytunnels for us, and they were really knowledgeable and informative about what kind of plants that we could use. Kate was checking these against her list of what was actually growing in the garden, and this was the sort of idea behind the speaker's stage for Highgrove. Originally, Kate and I found these beautiful reclaimed gates in this funny little lock-up area, which we were going to use for the stage, and I suddenly thought, do you know what, if that falls over and squashes somebody, I'm not sure that I can live with that. So we decided in the end to change these for some willow panels, which I'm going to show you. Ah, Lynn, there you are! And Michelle! And there Ellie. So here we are at Wyvale, trying to will on the Pulmonias or Pulmonarias to grow.
Yeah. And look how cold it looks.
Oh, it was
bloody
freezing. It was
cold,
cold, sorry. It was cold. But we were really amazed. And every time I come to Wyvale, genuinely, I discover something else that they do. And I didn't realise they did such fantastic topiary, actually. So I learned that on this trip. But they're such a good team to work with, because what I was doing is putting a list together of what I wanted, emailing it over to the guys, and nothing is too much trouble. So they were doing their absolute best to make sure that they could deliver what we needed. Sorry ladies, to put you back in the spotlight. So these are our hopeful plants. We're quite early on at this stage. We don't know whether they're going to make it or not. But we're certainly a bit more sure about the topiary. We're hoping no one's going to buy them in the meantime, so that we can definitely have them. I'm sorry. Okay, and this was my solution to those gates. Something much lighter, to get something made bespoke out of willow. I used a wonderful willow artist called Jay Davey. He's based in Somerset, and he's unbelievably reasonable. You can basically send him anything and he'll make it out of willow. So that was a good solution, which luckily Highgrove liked the idea. So here they are being delivered. So I've managed to get him to weave in the royal feathers into those willow panels. Amazing, really. So that's the rather unexciting looking space. Sorry, Your Royal Highness. So that's what I got. So we were very pleased to be there, and very privileged to be allowed to even take these photographs, to be honest, because it's strictly no photography at Highgrove, but they did allow me to take photographs of the stage, which I was very grateful for. So again, it was built in modular form. There's that purple colour that you saw on the mood board. Our willow panels have gone in place, and here's the all-important screen. A bit of fun and games getting that to work. There's a student still smiling through the painting. All very good-natured. And then the best thing, the whole place comes alive when the plants come in. They're the most important element. This Fatsia, now there's a thing, Kate's smiling at the back of the room. Because she thought I was nuts when I picked that Fatsia, but I was hoping it would do a good job for me in terms of form, because it's so architectural, which it did. But even more than that, what I didn't know was this room was in nearly complete darkness. I should have thought of that, shouldn't I? Because I know there's a projector, and I know that there's speakers, but it somehow never occurred to me that it would be almost complete darkness. This planting has got to look good for a whole week. And I thought, oh, I hope it's still looking good on the last day. And luckily, plants like Fatsia, which are very shade tolerant, were absolutely in their element. And particularly because that's spider's web. It was very commented on, actually, at the show. And so that really was a good doer. We were blessed that Adrian had these hellebores that were just the right colour for our purple. And here we're sort of filling up, arranging, sort of creating a planting effect. The interesting thing you'll see is these tulips, by the end of being in darkness for a week, are nearly as tall as that sign. Because the poor things are saying, I'm sure if I keep growing, I'm going to find light somewhere. I've just got to keep trying. So you can see that colour palette that we had on the mood board is there. Getting the lighting right, very important. This spirea here was very, very admired as well. And it looked good for a week. It did its job. This shrub I absolutely love. It's called Sorbaria. I don't know if you know it. It's got a reputation of being a bit old-fashioned, a bit of a granny shrub. It all comes back in again. And, it's a good doer for coloured foliage. There I am, waxing lyrical, a bit like I'm doing now. And finally, how are we doing on time? Are you all getting a bit hot? I'll sort of power through this one for you. I just thought I'd show you some real client work. It's all well and good doing these arty-farty feature gardens, but how about real clients? This is a client of mine, and I'm developing the whole garden, but as a sort of quick fix, they wanted some planting in a couple of areas. And you know me, it all starts with mood boards. So we explored options of colour palettes. This is a mood board for one area of the garden. They call it the New English Garden. It's a bit like Hidcote, basically. And of course, there's always a trip to Wyvale involved. And I always usually manage to bring some students along with me to come and have a look at the plants. I think you're there, Anthea, were you? Was that you? No, just someone who looks like you. Hard to imagine anyone else, so lovely. So here's one of my planting plans for that job. And as I'm sure a lot of you know, how we start is by putting the shapes in first, choosing the plant second. And let me tell you a big confession. When I designed this, the client wanted it in situ from the 5th of January this year. I sat down, I had my mood boards, but the first thing I did when I chose my plants was get up the Wyvale plant list in front of me. Because that way I know that everything's going to be available, it can all get delivered. I'm not going to get disappointed, I'm not going to waste weeks chasing plants that aren't available. They're all there, they're all readily available. And I was more than enough choice for me to be able to fill up. There were a few extra things like some David Austin roses, but mostly it was Wyvale plants. So here I've completed my planting plans. I'm doing some visuals for the clients to show them elevations of what that planting is going to look like. And this is where the planting is going. 2 areas, 6 of these boxed edged borders, not easy to say, which are going around the house. And also here, we've got the long thin borders. So there are 4 of these, 2 with a beautiful view at one end, and 2, there's a gorgeous seat here, I'm sat on it, can't see it, it's a lovely arts and crafts bench. So I'm going to fill that with plants, and the brief was they wanted it instant. They wanted it to look like it had always been there. And again, thank you to my lovely students, because a lot of them sitting in the audience are about to star. Sorry ladies, we're going to have some pictures of you looking gorgeous. But this is how good Wyvale are. I asked Adrian very cheekily if I could please have Dutch trolleys for the same price, but because I was placing a nice big order, look how beautifully they're packaged and presented, and that didn't cost me any extra. And the Dutch trolleys, I have to say, were a complete lifesaver, because this is £16,000 worth of plants. Just moving them about would have been a total nightmare. And yes, we had to put some timbers down because we were going over gravel and turf in a few places, but mostly those Dutch trolleys probably reduced the number of planting days by 2. You know, that's saving everyone money, so that was fantastic. Now, Helena, who's sitting in our audience, you're going to see her in a minute, because she had the very thankless task of counting them all. But that is a really important job, you know, because if they're not all there or something's gone wrong, but I can say the Wyvale plants were perfect. Is that right, Helena? They were all spot on, and that's thousands of plants, not one too many, not one not enough, all exactly as we'd ordered them, which was great. So the root ball trees going first. We used Amelanchier canadensis because they wanted year-round interest. These came from Wyvale as well. Obviously, we're getting our Dutch trolleys in situ. We start by grouping the plants. I've got lots of evergreen ground coverage here to keep the weeds out because the client's asking for as minimum maintenance, as much as you can in a border that makes Hidcote look a bit mean, you know, it's never going to be low maintenance. Look at, oh look, the slackers! The slackers! having a cup of coffee. But no, they were working very hard, and in some really, really cold conditions as well. They did look, Elena sporting her earmuffs there rather beautifully. So there was a lot of hard work after the setting out. So I was around for the first 2 days to do the setting out. I think in total the planting took about 10 days, is that about right? With a weekend break in the middle, setting it all out. And I'm not even here now, these guys are just doing it by themselves, sending me images. Now, luckily the client is so happy with it and so excited, they keep sending me photos of it, which is great. So this spring, all those, of course, as you'd expect, the Amelanchias doing their thing, looking fantastic. And then we're going to segue seamlessly into about 2 weeks ago. It's filling out really nicely, no chance for the weeds to get into there. And the client asked for year-round interest and colour, and they're really delighted. They feel like they've absolutely got what they asked for. And it's sitting very well with the rest of the garden. That's something we need to think about. If you're only planting up a part of the garden, you don't want it to look alien to the rest of the garden. That's really important, but it's sitting in very nicely. And then in a minute you're going to see the drama, saving it till the end of the double borders there. And I took a bit of a punt with delphinium. It's always a risky one for clients, isn't it? Because of the needing staking, and these guys are on clay soil. But luckily, they turned out to be the plant that the client most liked, actually. He's very fond of his delphiniums. So I've got begonias there, giving me a nice evergreen edge to the planting. And what I didn't point out, I perhaps could have done on the planting plan, is my swathes are going in diagonals, symmetrically. So they're like go faster stripes, which is taking your eye either to the bench or along to the view through the gate. I think I'm going the wrong way now. Maybe I'm not. Well, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. I'm dyslexic, I can't tell left from right. We're nearly there. Delphiniums doing their thing. So these are all Wyvale plants. And I think that's the last one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions at all from anybody? Does that all seem self-explanatory? I'm around for the rest of today, so if you think of anything and you want to just grab me, please do. I'm delighted to speak with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. We're easily...
Told you after some process.
So this particular one says what happened in the back there, like that. That's the
Hi, how are you?
So, here we are, we've got burnished together, and I'm really excited because burnished was probably my favourite trend at Chelsea.
Absolutely. We saw it all over Andy Sturgeon's garden, and he had a star plant that the crowds were swooning for. He had Isoplexus canariensis, a bright orange, very tender digitalis. It was an amazing thing, and something that excited even the hard-nosed garden designers who've done Chelsea for years. When he unloaded it off the van, it oohed and ahed.
However, the frustrating thing being, if I use that for my clients, too tender it would die and I'd have to replace the plants.
Yeah, in this country it's really a hothouse plant unless you live somewhere southern like Cornwall or the Scilly Isles. But Wyvale is the answer to your dreams because they have this incredible digitalis. Digitalis illumination flame. And not only is it gorgeous to look at with these fantastic burnished fingers of flowers, it's perennial, truly perennial. Not like the normal biennial digitalis. This will give you a flower for very long periods each year, year after year after year.
And we like that because not only is it good value, it's less work in the garden, we're all up for lower maintenance, aren't we? And years of pleasure from one planting has got to be a good thing. There's something else I'd like to talk about just while we happen to have these two gorgeous plants next to each other. This second one is called Astilbe Brennan, and both of these plants actually will tolerate shade, which is an interesting thing. Now, here we can see that they are a very similar form or shape. They both have this elegant spire-like form, but a very different texture. Texture's a very subtle thing that a lot of people really don't understand, but I think that's a lovely illustration that this is fluffy and light and airy, this is solid and shiny. So similar form, tonal colour, very different texture. Texture's a subtle thing, but it's very important in good planting.
And teal, another big trend from Chelsea this year. We've recreated it with some plants from Wyvale here, and I think it is so working brilliantly. I love this sort of silvery, burnished sort of seed at the bottom with this festuca, wonderful sort of frothiness up through the echinacea and the agastache. I think it's a fabulous, very interesting combination.
It's quite different to really focus on really two colours, the orange and the teal. And that coppery orange has been very strong in interior design. We've seen it inside for a few seasons now. Wonderful to see it venturing outdoors into the garden and creating a strong new trend.
We've got another wonderful example how Wyvale plants are bang on trend. This is a gorgeous foxglove. It's Digitalis Dalmatian peach. What a glorious soft peachy colour that really will blend with anything. It's such a versatile, gorgeous tone, it really is. And almost exciting because although they've been around forever, foxgloves, and they're considered very traditional, they were bang on trend at Chelsea this year. We saw them a lot all over the gardens there, but particularly on the LG garden, which almost had a sugar-sweet, pastely, frou-frou collection of plants, rather similar to what we've recreated here. People were oohing and ahhing in Chelsea, and with good reason. Foxgloves are brilliant. They've taken over from lupins to give you these tall, elegant spires and so on. They come in all sorts of shades. Pam's Choice is another white one with those purpley speckles, but I really am in love with this peachy tone. It does blend and tone with all sorts of things, and here in this design, I think you agree, it's kind of brought everything alive. It's given you that height, but it's blended it all together.
It's good to be here at Wyvale, having just put together some fantastic displays of plants, just using plants we picked up off the nursery. For instance, Dryopteris ethrasaura. What a stunning fern. Look at how the foliage has that wonderful coppery tone. And notice how well that sits with the bark of the Betula tree there. It's a winning combination. At Chelsea, we found everywhere woodland planting and a celebration of shade. Not seeing shade as a problem, seeing shade as an opportunity where we can grow hostas. Hostas such as Alba marginata, or here at the back, really hitting you in the eye, Hosta Patriot. A wonderful combination. Contrast of colour, contrast of shape, contrast of texture. The three key elements of good planting.
Wyvale foliage, because we're in the woodland area, which of course was such a massive trend at Chelsea 2016. We saw it on Cleve West Garden so beautifully. A dapple canopy followed by lots of ferns and shade-loving gorgeous plants, which of course give the designer an opportunity to rise to that challenge and make shade less of a scary thing. It's a real challenge that people are responding to and enjoying and embracing shade.
And in fact, even more than that, I think many designers are not even seeing it as a challenge at all, but as an opportunity, as an oasis of calm, cool, quiet, where there are no bright colours to distract the eye, the shapes, the textures become much more evident. So hostas like, for instance, Patriots, which has that lovely white variegated edge, really shine out of the gloom and really make a statement in the shady garden.
And of course ferns are so important, and Wyvale has an extensive range of ferns for dry shade, for boggy shade positions. It's an amazing selection they have here. And of course trees, lest we forget, they do field-grown transplants, container trees, to create this sort of wonderful canopy you see above us with these native birches.
So excited to talk about primary. When I went to Chelsea, I saw Hugo Bugg's garden and the L'Occitane garden with these quite hard primary colours. I didn't know what I made of it at first. I was a little bit out of my comfort zone. But I did notice that these primary colours were blended, either with grasses or with white. And that means they're much easier to use, almost like a sort of crazy meadow effect. And I was a bit nervous when we decided to put these plants together. I thought, am I going to get it? Is it really going to convey that trend that we'd seen at Chelsea? But you know, I'm absolutely thrilled with what we've achieved here.
Caroline's completely right. I'm scared of yellow and red and blue all together, and I think most of our clients are as well. Traditionally, people like pastel colours in the garden. They think they're soothing and gentle in the eye. Red and blue and yellow are challenging. They're not easy colours, but we saw it done in such a new, fresh way. Hubert blended it with these beautiful grasses. There was a lot of arid landscape that he put these colours in, and they totally worked. And as we built this planting scheme up together here at Wyvale, the more we added, the more excited we got. I'm really thrilled by this, because we've seen red, white and blue done hundreds of times before, traditional bedding schemes, and it always looks a bit old-fashioned. And here it looks young and fresh and new. The dahlia zings out amongst these delphiniums. I think it really works.
I do, and I think for me, the absolute star is one of the more understated plants, which is this Coreopsis. What a fantastic texture. Really wonderful, and really, again, blending the other colours together.
Yes, with that slightly more lemon yellow.
Yeah,
it's not quite as harsh. It just blends through down to the salvia and the lavender again. I think it works. I think it's very harmonious. Moody, sultry palette on Joe Thompson's garden in Chelsea this year. Now, one of the star plants from Wyvale we've employed to recreate that sort of trend is this fantastic delphinium, Magic Fountain series. It's gorgeous. Look at that statuesque beauty. Those gorgeous deep blue flowers just on the verge of opening. It's a fantastic thing to give you lots of height, and it keeps going with that dark tone, that sort of moody blues feel that's all amongst this planting.
We found when we put the planting together that really it was this delphinium that was the sort of X factor. It really, that height, that statuesque form brought it alive. Charlie Osborne also showing this bruised colour palette at Chelsea. It's one that's going to run and run, and just like Mr. Darcy, I'm a big fan.
Well, we're ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody's finished their sausage rolls, so here we are. Thank you for staying on and listening to me waffle on. I'm Kate Durr, and I recently qualified from the Cotswold Garden School, where I did a diploma in professional garden design. That was 2015. But during that time, I was rather rashly encouraged by the principal, Caroline, who you heard talk earlier, to enter a show garden design at Malvern. And I duly accepted this challenge, even though I was still on my course and didn't quite know the terror that would possess me going forward. So, let's click along the side. So, Malvern, 2015. I had to set about transforming this small, rather unprepossessing sort of piece of mud in the windy valley beneath the Malvern Hills into this, which was somewhat of a challenge, as I really didn't know what I was doing, and it's the first time I've ever done a show garden, and yeah, steep learning curve, shall we say. So, the Cotswold Gardening School, as I say, right in the middle of a course, having done 10 years of childcare, raising my kids, and as I say, the added mix into the crazy time full of homework and SketchUp and technical drawing was the Malvern Spring Festival. But I went along to an RHS seminar, which is run by them every year in November time, and once you put an application in, you might get accepted. They give you some tips and wrinkles. They invite professional designers to come along and speak to you, and you furiously make notes. Now, in listening to that seminar, I knew that you had to give your garden a backdrop and enclose it with boundaries as much as possible, because you really don't want the gents' toilets featuring as your backdrop, and the BBC aren't going to want to film your garden if all they can see is guys coming up sitting their thighs out. Include seating. This is something Caroline impressed upon me. You want somewhere for Monty Don, as she said earlier, to park his pretty derriere when he's giving a wonderful piece to camera about your garden, because of course you're going to get it on Gardener's World. You've got to give it the wow factor. I come from a showbiz background, I've done a lot of television presenting, so I understood that. Really, a show garden is a perfect vignette that you're creating that stands alone, a little sort of corner of Eden, if you will. And don't forget, it's all about the plants. Something that I was very keen to really push was the fact it was all about the plants. I didn't want to get hung up too much on fancy sculptures and hard landscaping, important as they are. I really wanted to concentrate on the plants. So, showbiz background, very keen on creating that vignette. So I looked to theatre design, because that's what it's all about, to create that self-contained little moment of perfection. And I looked through a lot of Royal Shakespeare Company productions, and a lot of the Shakespeare sets really resonated with me, particularly Midsummer Night's Dream. This is what this is. I love the idea that you're almost using flats to create a garden, and I love this rusty colour. Also this, it's a completely different set, but it just works very well. Those vertical lines, this rusty colour came up again. I started to look more and more at theatre design. And that's when I came up with the idea of using these panels. This is a very fabulous man called Neil Lossock, a blacksmith, and he exhibited at the Autumn Malvern show, and that's where I fell in love with these fern panels. He plasma cuts the shape of king ferns and then pulls them and teases them away to create this 3D kind of effect. And this is before they've gone rusty. That's what they look like, and then he paints them with brick acid or occasionally peas on them. That seems to work quite well. So you keep them wet and give them something acidic, then they'll come up gorgeous and rusty. More of those. And you can see I've started, oops, jumped ahead, how do I go back? Previous, and can I roll down? No, is it that one? Don't know. Anyway, we're stuck on it. So, yes, mood boards. Caroline's talked a lot about those. I am her, very much her little student, and I followed her advice very much about creating mood boards to work out what I was doing. This was my master plan. Very simple, for good reason. I was a student, and I was very scared of doing something very complicated, and also Malvern told us, keep it simple, keep it simple. You have to be able to create this in 3 weeks. There's very little digging you can do down because it's like rock at Malvern, and also digging is expensive, excavation is expensive. So as you can see, taking from that theatre idea, I've got the flats, the wings coming in. There's a backdrop of those screens here. I've employed a water reel to reflect those screens. The whole idea is this perfect vignette. Plus, it's very symmetrical and neat. I wanted there to be a very large contrast between the symmetrical nature and the linear nature of the design and the exuberant, frothy planting. So I called it constraining nature, because that's essentially what we do when we create a garden. We clip, we prune, we weed selectively, we try to constrain nature. We don't necessarily always succeed, but we have a jolly good time trying. So here you can see, final master plan, with those rusty screens, clipped elements, rusty rill, and also added into the scary mix that was now becoming this fast-moving train that I couldn't get off, was the UCare tulip. UCare is a urological cancer charity, and they wanted to launch their emblem, which is a pink tulip, at Malvern, and I was very graciously offered the job of launching it on my garden. So I haven't planned to use candy pink tulips in my planting plan, but I thought it was quite a good opportunity, so I went with it. So that's where I got to, and this was my SketchUp model. This is the first time I ever tried to do SketchUp, and I remember this well. At 3 o'clock in the morning, sat alone, typing and trying to rotate trees, but it's such a wonderful tool, works brilliantly for kind of really showing someone how you think it's going to look. So I was beginning to get ideas about planting and where things might go. I knew my trees were going to be Amelanchias. So beginning at this stage now to think about plants. This is in February and the show is in May. So another drawing there to illustrate how it might seem. There's me with the pink tulips, smiling for the cameras. It's going to be fine, it's going to be wonderful. I also had to choose things that were going to make up the hard landscaping, and I wanted benches that would look fabulous. And I came across Alison Crowther, who made incredible hand-carved oak benches for Arnie Maynard in Chelsea 2012. And Alison was an absolute star and invited me to go down to her studio down in Sussex and choose pieces, because she was very keen to support the studio, which was very, very exciting. Now, plants. Hortus loci. I wanted to go to somewhere that I knew was used to show gardens, and boy do they know what they're doing there. So, terrified of going on to my first meeting, I bought a tray of Krispy Kreme donuts, put on my lucky pants, and walked through the door and met this team. This is my husband, who came along to hold my hand because I was so terrified. This is Mark and Michael and Robin. They are the daddies of Hortus Loci, and they were extraordinarily helpful. Now, I point this out not to be in any way disloyal to Wyvale, but this was my first experience of going to a big nursery, and it was a very valuable lesson. They were great, and they taught me through my little design. We spent about 3 or 4 hours, inch by inch, centimetre by centimetre, discussing the kind of plants we could use. This is the Chelsea Tunnel at Hortus. And what's so great about Malvern being in the beginning of May is that if anything they have that's lurking in the Chelsea Tunnel goes over too soon, you can staffle it up for Malvern. So it was quite awe-inspiring wandering through here, seeing names like Cleve West, Matthew Keatley, thinking, my gosh, I'm in this cathedral of perfection. There is Matt Keatley. He was there planting up little succulents into his granite towers that he used in his Centre Valley garden. And God bless him, when I went to Chelsea, he invited me on his garden, which was thrilling to go and actually see it in the flesh. So back to Hortus. There's me choosing trees with Mark and actually putting my name on a tree. Kate Durr, Oranges Malvern, it's really happening. The tension is rising now because I've got to pull this off. So, back to the actual day, breaking ground, there we are, posing for the cameras, full of enthusiasm, exciting. And there we are, being silly on our little plot, thinking how the hell it's so small and I've got to make it wonderful. Here we go, more of the same, and I could bore you, well, till next week with shots of digging and spraying out and all the rest of it. Here we are putting these wonderful panels in, instant gardening, I love that, instant backdrop. We're starting to get the hedging in, which look really, really scary. This is 2 weeks to go and there's no leaves on that one, willing it on, lots of watering, lots of talking to plants, lots of trees being delivered. Here we go. So, time goes on, I'm still searching for plants because I haven't got everything I want from Hortus, because obviously unlike some of the big show gardens at Chelsea, I haven't been planning this for 2 years, it's a matter of months and sometimes weeks. I haven't got the £350,000 budget that some of those show gardens on Main Avenue have in Chelsea. It's all the kid bollocks scramble. Caroline recommends me to go to Wyvale up the road. Up the road, it's still an hour and a half probably from Malvern Showground, but I went because I was still searching for hostas, hellebores, Tolima, Solomon's seal, all manner of things I still had in mind, because right behind this rill and in front of this backdrop I wanted a purely green, shady planting area, which was going to be a marked contrast to the planting we were going to have further down here, which was all about fire, pinky tulips, burnished orange and bright zingy jewel colours. And I still wasn't quite happy with the plants I had in mind there from Hortus. Well, what an incredible discovery it was coming to Wyvale. Amazing. You can see at this stage all the flowers are out on my Amelanchier, which means that by the time judging happens they'll all be gone over. Luckily, it's such a fantastic tree, it gives you year-round interest. So you go from pale blossom in early spring, then bronzy new leaves that give you amazing colour, which toned beautifully with my screen, and then they phase into green in the summer, and in the winter you have an amazing silhouette that lasts throughout the winter months. So, I'm panicking about blossom. Meanwhile, all of this is going on, hard landscaping. It comes to plant delivery day. Now this stage I have been to Wyvale and I've spent 3.5 hours with Adrian going round hand picking plants. He was so excited that a designer had come and actually wanted to spend that level of time. We got locked in because we took so long to go through and hand choose things. And the great thing about Adrian is he's so passionate about his job. He was so interested in designers sharing their vision with him, and he was so helpful and gave me so much advice about which plants we should choose, particularly because he has an interest in bog plants and shady, damp planting. He's really thrilled and turned on by that. So we had a great time. So this is plant delivery day. I just have to work out how I'm going to click on this. And as you can see from this little clip, I'm actually quite excited.
It's plant delivery day at Malvern, which is very exciting, but also a little bit stressful. One of the common problems show designers experience at this time of year, early on in the spring, is finding plants that give us height for our designs. I think I've been lucky in sourcing this beautiful salvia. Salvia sylvestris tangerine. In about a week and a half, fingers crossed, it will give me the most dramatic, deep purple columns of flowers, which will be a wonderful foil to my UK pink tulips. The other star that's giving me some height is this rather statuesque yet delicate Verbascum. Verbascum clementine. You can see the amazing colour combination in its flowers. Rusty apricot with a centre of almost bright fuchsia pink and clear orange pollen on those stamens. It's a wonderful plant. It's a bit of a daring colour combination, but I'm hoping the judges will recognise the risk I've taken.
So it was a bit windy. As you can well hear. That's why we've got all these windscreens all the way around. It was insanely windy. And there are all the plants. That's what it looked like after I'd unloaded the Dutch trolleys, and I had to try and make sense of that. Now, I didn't have a planting plan per se. Bear in mind, at this stage of my course at Cotswold Gardening School, I hadn't even done a planting plan, so I was learning on the hoof. But I had identified areas which I knew were going to be green, with hostas and Solomon seal. I knew these tree peonies were going to be stars of the show, and they had their place. But everything else was on the wing, and I've since learned actually sometimes that's quite a good way to work with shade gardens, because you can never guarantee the plant that you're hanging everything on will be available. It might get eaten by something, it might fail, it might break, so it's always good to be flexible. And you know, living by the seat of your pants is a little bit stressful, but if you can remain calm and substitute something, you're halfway there. So this is me just trying to arrange everything, get it together. We had lots of fennel to give us a frothy feel. Of course, those tulips were due to arrive, and I hadn't even got those into the equation yet. They arrived at the last minute because I didn't want anything to destroy them. I mean, we literally had to put them in at the 11th hour. Ferns again. Lots of ferns from Wyvale, incredible choice of ferns here, and as we saw at Chelsea this year, it's a really strong trend coming through for ferns. And this little ginger, that's it, Azarum Europeum, I think it's called. Fabulous thing, because it's so glossy and green and great. It makes such a contrast and just sits there quietly doing its thing. So you can see it's beginning to come together, this wonderful euphorbia, a great foil for this incredible tree peony, great rusty planting. And I'm beginning to put this shade palette together back here with grasses. And we're getting there now. We're just doing the turfing, everything's going to be perfect, sort it all out. You can see the rusty corn edges I've employed to echo the rusty steel here. Again, constraining all this planting, constraining nature. This is some Arisium that I nicked from Matthew Keighley's Chelsea tunnel. He doesn't really know about that, keep it quiet. But actually it didn't work. I decided I didn't want that pop of orange there, it was just too strong. But there's the tulips, they've finally gone in. They were very pink. This grass kind of knocked them back and made a sort of fringed curtain in front of them, which helped just knock that pink and blend it through a little bit more. And you can see the Solomon seal, the ferns, the hellebores, which are an 11th hour addition on a dash to Wyvale, because I knew I needed something more, and they were the star of the show. They really did work well. Design principles, obviously always employing these. Listening to Caroline, making those notes. Contrast of form, texture, colour and shape. That's what we live by. It's all about contrast. Avoid the smorgasborder. That's something I'm always remembering. That's what I used to do before I started training, was to have a random collection of lovely things that I adored because I love plants, but it doesn't work in terms of making a smooth, melodic flow through a border. Add structure. My God, that was difficult in early May. Nothing was tall, everything was short, it had been a cold spring. But we managed it with that Verbascum, and also the Verbascum violetta. That added fingers of colour and all, and focal points. Now this is that shade planting, which I was so pleased with in the end, but I knew what I wanted to achieve, but it was a struggle to get there. But these Hosta halcyon, amazing quality hostas. When we were working with Highgrove, I was trying to find hostas. The Prince has the Royal Collection, the National Collection of hostas in the UK. So they're a big thing at Highgrove in the Stumpery. Big, strong theme hostas. Remarkably untouched by slugs. Maybe they're too in awe that they're in the Royal Garden. So I knew I needed to have some for the Highgrove Festival I worked on earlier this year. Could I find hostas? Searched the country, phone calls everywhere. Nobody had hostas that were doing anything other than that little lovely spear coming up. Couldn't find them anywhere. I came to Wyvale to look for other things. I've given up on hostas at this stage. Walked into a tunnel, and there were the most prized hostas you've ever seen. This size, huge, perfect. I sort of nearly fainted at these gorgeous hostas, and I said, oh my God, I must have Adrian. They're perfect for Highgrove. I need those hostas. So he made a quick phone call and said, oh no, sorry, Kate, they're sold. You can't have them. My quick retort was, well, who do I have to give a blowjob to get some hostas from? Needless to say, everyone went bright red. I didn't actually have to perform any sexual favours, but I did get my hostas. Colin was very embarrassed, but he gave me my hostas. So, why Vale for hostas and blowjobs? No, I'm joking. So, why Vale, hostas, incredible plants, real star numbers. And alongside, we've got some Gelinia, we've got these beautiful Matusia ferns, we've got Epimediums, we've got Tolima, and again, these hellebores. These were from Wyvale. Incredible. I think it's winter moonbeam. Gorgeous marbling on them. And what was so exciting for me about this bit of planting, which I love doing, was that the judges afterwards were saying to me that they took lots of photographs of this because they figured that was pretty much gold standard for shade planting, which is, a newbie was amazing praise indeed. I was very excited about that. And you can see how it reflects off this incredibly dark water. That's Diafix, beloved of so many garden designers. Lovely tree peony here, pink buds just emerging. I almost like it before they've opened. I think they look quite sexy. And there's those oak cubes by Alison Crowther, those wonderful little cubes that she let me borrow. I took Evan's pictures. I was very excited about this. A Comiclea there, being frothy in the middle, and there's that little azarum at the bottom, poking through. Lots of that. Tulips, there they were. That's how they arrived, just as we had a hailstorm. Art show garden's great fun. And I needed a lot of that because that's how I spend most of my nights, coming back after planting for hours and hours. But they got in along with Euphorbia there and the Bressingham purple Polemonium, which was a lovely thing. And that's nearly at the end. We've put our sort of barriers up of rusty chains, Verbascum Violetta. There's Verbascum Clementine, I was waxing lyrical about in that windy VT. I think this is Red Zinger, this iris. That was a winner as well. More pictures, more pictures. I took endless pictures, ever knowing that this was going to be shaken down and struck, and there it is. We'll whisk through these quickly. It was a rusty thing. So comes judging day. Kept a photograph of this because I thought if I lose this piece of paper I shall regret it. This is what they give you, the judges, and they were very, very complimentary, which was thrilling to hear. And they said, well, even some of the Chelsea designers get so many ticks in the excellent column. I got 2 ticks here, one for planting implementation, quality, health and density, and plant association, relevant species, culture. I only got a very good, and I know why that is. I had those irises in, and obviously you have to show your rhizomes of your irises as you plant them in the garden so they bake and can get hot in the summer, otherwise they won't flower. But there was too much of a gap around the base of one of these rhizomes. And I kept looking, seeing earth and panicking, thinking, I can't show any earth, I've got to put something in there. Sage, that's good, hot, dry, baked, fertile a bit of sage in there like that. Unfortunately, it covered a little bit too much of the rhizome and they all picked up on it. So that's why in this column, I've got a very good, but not an excellent. From Stephen Woodman's, he told me that's all that was all about. But, nevertheless, I got a gold medal and best festival garden, which was absolutely thrilling, an amazing experience, and I learned so much. There I am getting crystal vases from bigwigs from the RHS, and all lots of pictures of this. Various glamorous people came to sit on my little garden. Those seats worked a treat. There's James Alexander Sinclair, Raymond Blanc and I drinking champagne. Oh look, and there's we had to get them as well. They came to celebrate
nice
with me.
Footwear.
Yes, absolutely. Appropriate footwear for Holborn. Because they really were such an integral part of the whole experience. I could not have done it without them, and certainly not without Adrian's patience, without being locked in and talking through my plant choices and hand-picking them literally. He was an amazing support and very excited too to be part of it. They were superb. So there we are, this is the thrills after. So that's me and my family. They finally got to see me after the last 6 weeks. They actually came up and saw Mummy doing her thing. So we come to the end, no, nearly we do. So this is the final photograph I have of my garden, because, I'm going back a bit, I I can't go back, yes I can do that. Because come the end of the week, of course, this happens.
Well, it's Sunday evening and it's the end of RHS Malvern Spring Festival. I've had the most terrific week, not only winning my first ever RHS gold medal, but Best Festival Garden. I couldn't be happier. As a rookie, my first ever show garden to have done so well is simply fantastic. But now comes the moment I've been dreading. It's dismantling time. We've got to take this all down. My garden has to be raised to the ground by 5:30 tomorrow evening. So we have to empty the rill, dismantle the steel panels, take up all the plants, put them in pots, and a huge van ready to go home. It's sad, but hey, that's show gardening for you.
And it really is, because then, you know, this is what you have to do. And I spoke to Jekka McVicker. She came to the Highgrove Festival as one of our speakers. I had lunch with Jekka after she'd done her very funny talk. And she was saying she can't be there. When they take it all down, she said, it's like rape and pillage, I can't be there. I can't bear it. She said, you take so long and you nurture these plants so long. And some of them she propagated and grown from seed to be in her Chelsea garden this year. So there is no way I can see it being taken down. However, I had to, because I had to help. So yeah, all hands on deck into a big van, but luckily that most of them went home to my garden, and I'm still planting them a year on because I have no time. Sounds familiar for people in our profession. But I will have wonderful memories, cherished of this whole thing, and wonderful memories of the process in getting to that point. It was quite an extraordinary journey. I learned so much, and on the back of that, I got introduced to Highgrove. They were very impressed with the fact that I won a gold medal, and they trusted enough in me to make me creative director of their Highgrove Garden Festival, which Caroline was a part of. You may have heard her speak earlier. So we had to do a similar thing. We had to create planting displays for Highgrove in an early part of the year, even earlier than Malvern. So I was traipsing around Wyvale in February, dismaying, crying, trying to find things, hostas for example. But we managed to get there, and these are just a few images of the displays we did. We relied a lot on spring bulbs for colour. That time of year it was all about spring bulbs. But we had a superb time working closely with the team there, because it was important that we emulate what's grown in the garden at Highgrove. That's what people come to see when they visit the Royal Gardens. So we were interested to understand more about the garden, how they work there and what plants they employ. And indeed, the favourites of the Prince, which is a fascinating journey, and one that's changed, as it does with all of us, the more he's got into horticulture and the more he's grown. I was talking about his bedding plants earlier, I think, and on the terrace at Highgrove, just beautiful, lots of clipped topiary. It's quite an extraordinary place. There were some huge Greek pots filled with fuchsia pink bedding and yellow, which is a crazy combination that we'd all go, oh, let's spend a week there. And the more you walk back past this as you're working there, you start thinking, oh, I'm quite liking that clash, it's quite appealing. It's very interesting how all our tastes change. So I'm now Kate Garden Design, and very gainfully employed within the horticultural world, thanks for dipping my toe into the whole thing. But what I've become acutely aware of is you are only as good as your supplier. Likewise, you're only as good as your contractor. It really matters the team that you have behind you to help deliver what you want to present to the world. And in Highgrove's case, you know, everything had to be spot on. We were being scrutinised to the very highest level, and I felt confident enough that Wyvale were able to deliver that beautiful product for us, and they understood that, again, it was another show garden situation, so things had to be spot on. So, raw stamp of approval, I would say, for Wyvale, and there you go. Thank you very much.
Ben, tell me what that job entails.
Well, it means trialling a lot of varieties, going around nurseries, breeders and other suppliers, finding new product to suit our customers. It's a good job.
Yeah? So, where did your interest in horticulture come from?
Well, it's in the family. My granddad had a nursery which I kind of brought up on. So when I was about 14, I started working at another nursery and then developed from there. I did a degree and now I'm working at Wyver.
And you're clutching something. Tell us about this fabulous looking beastie.
So this is Rodgersia Bronze Peacock. It has won the most popular vote today from our customers poll. So it's a fantastic new selection of Rodgersia, really dark leaves, bright, vibrant pink flowers, stays compact, real improvement for Rodgersia.
What more can you want from a plant? I certainly know it got my vote.
Yes, and mine too. You can see the yellow stickers here telling us it's number one. Everybody's
It's got
favourite.
everything, hasn't it? Coloured foliage, as you say, that nice compact size. It's even coordinated with both of our outfits.
So what are you working on this year? What's the most exciting new product that I assume is for 2017?
We've got a whole range. It's been so much fun. We're looking at new fruit ranges, a lot of shrubs, a lot of hydrangeas. We have our flagships, which is hydrangea formiums, and a lot more herbaceous. So there's a lot to come, a lot more exciting product through Wyver Nurseries.
How exciting to see young people with so much passion for plants. Sorry, does that make me sound like...
Yes, you young people!